Hello! Today I am going to be reading and discussing with you, in the sense that I hope to read your comments or thoughts down below. We are going to be talking about John Lennon's second book. I already have a video on his first book, and as I said in that video, I am going to be talking and discussing John Lennon as the writer of these poems and as the artist, not so much going into his private life or issues or whatever. Still, I think it is very important for us to always criticize the media that we consume or that we like, and also the people behind all of that. Yes, okay, so just so you know, that's my thought or my opinion on that. But let's begin with the actual video, shall we?
Mr. Lennon, your first book was a bestseller, and I shouldn't think there's any doubt that this one's going to be too. Do you think that you'd be published were you not a Beatle?
I could probably get published, but I wouldn't sell as many. I mean, they publish a lot of rubbish anyway.
This second book, A Pioneer in the Works, was published in 1965, and you'll find poems that are interesting, also stories filled with sarcastic and whimsical dark humor. This first poem that we'll hear today is called The Womberlog, or The Magic Dog, and it is basically about a boy that goes to this other land because he's heard that that's the place where people who are dead live. So he goes there because he wants to see this bird-like creature and also his uncle, which we can assume maybe he's dead. And I won't read all the poem, but you can pause and read if you like. Whilst all the tower sleepy, crept a little boy from bed, to find the wondrous people would leave when they were dead. Perchance I'll see the Womberlog, the highly feathered crow, the laughing leaping Harry Sweet and good old Uncle Joe. Well, he certainly had a good ear, that's Obi. He rapidly get the hang of the rhythm he added to this piece. And I'm not going to pretend that I have musical ear or something, still I can recognize he was an expert in finding or creating a rhythm pattern. I think you have in this poem the iambic trimeter, 3 feet. As you can see there, to find the wondrous people would leave when they were dead. Well, as you've heard, the rhythm is great, it's fantastic. What else can we expect from a musician, right? And the metric unit of the poem is very consistent through the whole reading of it. It does use a lot of rhymes, and a lot of people tend to say that rhyming is a very cheap device or tool to use in poetry. I don't think so. I personally like that. It is not. It doesn't make the poem corny. It does fit very well into the poem, and it is very clear. And I think you already know, or if you're a fan of John Lennon, I think I've read that he really enjoyed reading Alice Through the Looking Glass. I don't think it was Wonderland, I think it's, I don't know, but just correct me on that one. And it does have this very Lewis Carroll-esque vibe, with the Womberlog, like evoking the Jojo Bird in The Hunting of the Snark. I think it also appears in the Jabberwocky. The Jabberwocky poem, and it is very clear, these animals that he invented just as the animals or creatures that Lewis Carroll did. Carroll once said that his poem, The Hunting of the Snark, it is kind of, he said, and he thought that he had written it about the search of happiness. And in this poem that we have this boy going to the land of death to look for his uncle, I think for me it is about the search for the meaning of life, of life and death. A very existential thought, I know. You see, because just as Alice and other characters too, like Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, you have a young kid that is facing a situation of going to this land, this strange land for him or her, and knowing that it's going to be dangerous and that he may or she may not come back And that's the thing happening here. There's this part of the poem where he says, "Where are all the people, please, who would leave when they are dead? I like to see them if I may, before I'm back to bed." So he's thinking in the idea of, okay, I may come back, I will return. But what happens if there's no return? There's always that possibility. And this is what happens in the story. Basically, the boy, along with the Womberlog, arrived to this island to find his uncle. And what does he find? Well, "What are you digging all the time?" he asked them like a brother. Before they answer he could see, they really dug each other. And at the end, once with his uncle, they bury him alongside him. The next one we are going to be reading, it's clear a political poem. And it wasn't new at the time. A lot of people used their art to criticize the government. For example, a lot of Irish poets used their poetry to call on or criticize the structure and discuss the structure of the state, making a very powerful statement with that. And I think it does work. Just take a look at slam poetry, a kind of a political complaint using poetry. Even if we're talking about also musicians, Tupac, he also shared his point of view of the systematic oppression happening at that time, and that it is still happening in the country, not only through his songs but also in poetry. So let's begin reading the general Erection.
No, Harris Wilsard won the general election with a very small margery over the Torchies, thus putting the labouring party back into Powell after a large abscess. This he could not have done without span the barking of the trade onions, headed by Frank Cunnings, who now has a safe seat in Nuneaton, thank you.
So as you've heard, he does mention names that he changes for the amusement of the reader. You have harassed Wilsard. The real name is Harold Wilson, who was a prime minister that the party opposite to his hated. I only know this by watching The Crown. This is a clear satirical political comedy. He even addresses and mocks the way another ex-prime minister spoke, Alec Douglas Home. He says, "Sir Alice Douglas Home was quite bitterly disappointed." And that happens also today, as when people mimic the way Trump's voice is. Then he continues, "What you are happened to answer me in is ex-prime minister after the Zeus pudding. People are saying, well, I don't know." That name, is it me, or it's kind of like those jokes in the SNL sketches where there are people lining outside the name's registry office? You tell me. Anyways, he's talking clearly about an ex-prime minister who was Anthony Eden, who was in charge or guilty of the military disaster in the Suez Canal. And at this time, the author was a young man. He was probably, 24, 25? And he tells us a lot about how he was aware, or that he was aware of the change that was happening at the time in his country, with the Labour Party taking power and all that, which sets the idea that young people are and we must be aware of what is happening in political circles, not only leave that to the old folks. Okay, sorry for the weird angle, but I had to go to work now. I was saying that John Lennon here and a lot of artists tend to share their thoughts and opinions because they do have this platform and they have their art, so they tend to share their thoughts on that. And I think it's important. I mean, after all, they are people, they are citizens, and they have concerns. Lastly, but not least, we must not forget to put the clock back when we all get bombed, Harold. And this observation that, hey, are we going backwards or what is going on? We should better be careful. It may have led the reader to question what was happening in their own country. I guess what I mean with all of this is that art should not be always separated from discussions on social issues. It can lead actually to great things. The example is The Ballad of the Reading Jail by Oscar Wilde. He also wrote other articles talking about the treacherous life in prison, and because he experienced that firsthand. and that led to be a discussed benchmark and a good change in British penal history. And I just want to share this one with you. It is a funny one, and I hope we can both enjoy it. So it is basically the story of a girl that she's always laughing all the time. She's bothering her neighbors, her boyfriend, and people try to help her because they are fed up with it, but they fail. So let's begin. We have Araminta Ditch was always laughing. She will laugh at this, laugh at that, always laughing she was. Many body people would look at her saying, why does that Araminta Ditch keep laughing? They could never understand why she was ever laughing about the place. I hope she's not laughing at me, some people would say. I certainly hope that Araminta Ditch is not laughing at me. Hey, 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 she gurgled over the Mormon papiers. Hey, 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 continue. Araminta on the bus to work. These puzzle the passages, and the conductor equally both. Why is that boot laughing all the time? Inquired an elderberry passenger who traveled regulars on that roof and had a right to know. And as you've noticed, this poem has a lot of Lewis Carroll style of nonsense, situations, and also his clearly love for puns, as in the right to know. Also tends to portmanteau words, those linguistic blends of words, as in regulars or historyfs. And it has his satiric misspelling style, this kind of intentional I dialect that I do appreciate, and it makes the poems amusing to read. And I mentioned this in the other video. You can see here he mentioned several times the word larfing instead of writing laughing, and it is this kind of mix of Cockney pronunciation spelling and also the Scouse accent, the accent of the author's city of birth. She was of Corset talking to the extremely Reverend Lionel Hughes. She had gone to see him in case he could help her in any small way, considering he was always spot enough about helping people she thought she'd given him a try, as it were. What can I say, dear? I mean, what can I say? That's such a phrase from someone from church, right? Araminta looked at the holy thing with disbelief. What do you mean, what can I say? Don't ask me what to say. I come here to ask you for help, and you have the audacity to ask me what to say? Is that all you have to say? She yellowed. The story continues a little bit more, and we have a year or more passed over with no change in Araminta's strange laughing. Hey, 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 she went driven herself and everyone around her insane. There seemed no end to the problem. This went on for 80 years, until Araminta died laughing. This did not help her neighbors much. They had all died first, which was one of the many things that Araminta died laughing of. That's a great one, isn't it? It's a funny one. And it shows this British or even kind of dark sense of humor. The one that laughs last, laughs best, or something. He mentioned in another of his poems about the character of Randolph, this sense of being different and how it can create a sense of isolation or not being understood. What happens to Araminta in this case, and also people being nosy in your affairs. And when people think there's something wrong with you, they tend to bring religion to the table, which is fine. Everyone has their own way of dealing with stuff. But it was clear the religious angst John Lennon faced. The character also herself goes to seek help from church, but to no avail. Anyways, I still think if we try to analyze his poetry, most likely we will fail. But thank you so much for watching the video, and bye bye.